Hello everyone, welcome back. TailWind CSS version 4 is finally stable. Let's go through this blog post. TailWind CSS is an all-new version of the framework optimized for performance and flexibility with a reimagined configuration and customization experience and taking full advantage of the latest advancements in the web platform has to offer. A new high performance engine where full builds are up to 5x faster and incremental builds are over 1000x faster and measured in microseconds. Designed for the modern web, built on cutting edge CSS features like cascade layers, registered custom properties with property and color mix, simplified installation with fewer dependencies, zero configuration, and just a single line of code in your CSS file. First party Vite plugin, tight integration for maximum performance and minimum configuration, automatic content detection. All of your template files are discovered automatically with no configuration required. Built-in import support, no additional tooling necessary to bundle multiple CSS files. CSS first configuration, a reimagined developer experience where you customize and extend the framework directly in CSS instead of a JavaScript configuration file. CSS theme variable, all of your design tokens exposed as native CSS variable so you can access them from anywhere. Dynamic utility values and variants, stop guessing what values exist in your spacing scale or extending your configuration for things like basic data attributes. Modernized P3 color palette, a redesigned, more vivid color palette that takes full advantage of modern display technology. Container queries, first class APIs for styling elements based on their container size. No plugins required. New 3D transform utilities, transform elements in 3D space directly in your HTML. Expanded gradient APIs, radial and conic gradients, interpolation methods, modes, and more. Starting style support, a new variant you can use to create, enter, and exit transition without the need for JavaScript. Not variant, style an element only when it doesn't match another variant. Custom selector or media or feature query. Even more new utilities and variant, including support for color scheme, field sizing, complex shadows, inert, and more. Start using Tailwind CSS version 4 today by installing it in a new project or playing with it directly in the browser on Tailwind Play. For existing projects, we have published a comprehensive upgrade guide and built an automated upgrade tool to get you on the latest version as quickly and painlessly as possible. New high performance engine Tailwind CSS version 4 is a ground up rewrite of the framework, taking everything we have learned about the architecture over the years and optimizing it to be as fast as possible. When benchmarking it on our own projects, we have found that full rebuilds to be over 3x, 3.5x faster and incremental builds to be 8x faster. Here are the median build times we saw when we benchmarked Tailwind CSS version 4 against Catalyst. Full build version 3.4 378 millisecond, version 400 100 millisecond, improvement 3.78x. Incremental rebuild with new CSS 44 millisecond with version 3.4, version for 5 milliseconds, improvement 8.8x. Incremental rebuild with no CSS version 3.4 35 millisecond, version for 192 microseconds, improvement 182x. The most impressive improvement is on incremental builds that you don't need to compile any new CSS. These builds are over 100x faster and compiled in microseconds, complete in microseconds, and the longer you work on a project, the more of these builds you run into, because you are just using classes you have already used before, like flex, call, span to, or font bold. Designed for the modern web, the platform has evolved a lot since we released Tailwind CSS version 3, and version 4 takes full advantage of many of these improvements. So I think this is one of the improvements which it takes. We are leveraging modern CSS features like native cascade layers, giving us more control than ever over how different style rules interact with each other. Registered custom properties, making it possible to do things like animate gradients and significantly improve improving performance on large pages. Color mix, which lets you adjust the opacity of any color value, including CSS variables and current color. Logical properties, simplifying right to left support and reducing the size of your generated CSS. Many of these features have even simplified Tailwind internally and reducing the surface area for bugs, making the framework easier for us to maintain. Simplified installation, we have streamlined the setup process and done in version 4, reducing the number of steps and removing a lot of boilerplate code. So you can just do npm install tailwind css slash post css, add the post css plugin and import tailwind in your css. With the improvements we have made to this process for version 4, tailwind feels more lightweight than ever. Just one line of css, no more tailwind directives. Just add at the rate, import tailwind css and start building. Zero configuration. You can start using the framework without configuring anything, not even the paths to your template file. No external plugin required. We bundle at the rate import rules for you out of the box and use lightning css under the hood for vendor prefixing and modern syntax transform. Sure, you only go through this once per project, but it adds up when you are starting and abandoning a different side project every weekend. First party Vite plugin. If you are a Vite user, you can now integrate Tailwind using Tailwind CSS Vite instead of post CSS. So here you can see we are importing it like this. Tailwind CSS version 4 is incredibly fast when used as a post CSS plugin, but you will even get better performance using the Vite plugin. Automatic content detection, you know how you always had to configure that annoying content array in Tailwind CSS version 3. In version 4 we came up with a bunch of heuristics for detecting all of that stuff automatically, so you don't have to configure it at all. For example, we automatically ignore anything in your git ignore files to avoid scanning dependency or generated files that aren't under version control. We also automatically ignore all binary extensions like images, videos, zip files and more. And if you ever need to explicitly add a source that's excluded by default, you can always add it with the @source directive right in your CSS file. The @source directive uses the same heuristics under the hood, so it will exclude binary file types, for example, as well, without you having to specify all the extension to scan explicitly. Learn more about it in our new documentation on detecting classes in source file. Built-in import support before version 4. If you want to inline the other CSS file using @import, you would have to configure other plugin like post CSS import to handle it for you. Now we handle this out of the box, so you don't need any other tools. Our import system is purpose built for Tailwind CSS, so we have also been able to make it even faster by tightly integrating with our engine. CSS first configuration. One of the biggest changes in Tailwind CSS version 4 is the shift from configuring your project in JavaScript to configuring it in CSS. Instead of a Tailwind config.js file, you can configure all of your customization directly in the CSS file, where you import Tailwind, giving you one less file to worry about in your project. Import Tailwind CSS, @theme, font display, Satoshi, sans serif. So yeah, something like this. The new CSS first configuration lets you do just about everything you could in your Tailwind config.js file, including configuration, your design token, defining custom utilities and variants and more. To learn more about how it works, read the new theme variables documentation. CSS theme variables. Tailwind CSS version 4, take all of your design tokens and make them available as CSS variable by default, so you can reference any value that you need at runtime using just CSS. Using the example @theme from earlier, all of these values will be added to your CSS as regular custom properties. This makes it easy to reuse this value as inline styles or pass them to libraries like Motion to animate them. And dynamic utility values and variants. We have simplified the way many utilities and variants work in version 4 by effectively allowing them to accept certain types of arbitrary values. without the need for any configuration or dropping down to the arbitrary value syntax. For example, in Tailwind CSS version 4, you can create grids of any size out of the box. You can also target custom boolean data properties without needing to define them. Even spacing utilities like px, mt, w, h, and more are now dynamically derived from a single spacing scale variable and accept any value out of the box. The upgrade tool we released alongside version 4 will even simplify most of these utilities for you automatically if it notices you using an arbitrary value that's no longer needed. Modernized P3 color palette. We have upgraded the entire default color palette from RGB to OKLCH, taking advantage of the wider gamut to make colors more vivid in spaces where we were previously limited by the sRGB color space. We have tried to keep the balance between all the colors the same as it was in version 3, so even though we have refreshed things across the board, it shouldn't feel like a breaking change when you are upgrading your existing project. Container queries, we have brought container query support into the core for version 4, so you don't need the Tailwind CSS container queries plugin anymore. We have also added support for max width container queries using the new @max variant. Like our regular breakpoint variants, you can also stack @min and @max variants to define container query ranges. Learn more about in our new container queries documentation. New 3D transform utilities. We have finally added APIs for doing 3D transform like rotate X, rotate Y, scale Z, translate Z, and tons more. Check out the updated transform style, rotate, perspective, and perspective origin documentation to get started. Expanded gradient APIs. We have added a ton of new gradient features in version 4, so you can pull off even fancier effects without having to write any custom CSS. Linear gradient angles. Linear gradients now support angles as values, so you can use utilities like bg linear 45 to create a gradient on a 45-degree angle. You may have noticed we have renamed bg gradient to bg linear 2, and you will see why shortly. Gradient interpolation modifiers. We have added the ability to control the color interpolation mode for gradients using a modifier. So a class like bg linear to r sRGB interpolates using sRGB, and bg linear to r OKLCH interpolate using OKLCH. Using polar color spaces like OKLCH or HSL can lead to much more vivid gradients when the from star to star colors are far apart on the color wheel. We are using the OK lab by default in version 4, but you can always interpolate using a different color space by adding one of these modifiers. Conic and radial gradients. We have added the new BG conic star and BG radial star utilities for creating conic and radial gradients. These new utilities work alongside the existing from, via, and to utilities to let you create conic and radial gradients the same way you create linear gradients, and include modifiers for setting the color interpolation method and arbitrary value support for controlling details like the gradient position. Starting style support. The new starting variant adds support for the new CSS starting style feature, making it possible to transition element properties when an element is first displayed. With the starting style, you can finally animate elements as they appear on the page without the need for any JavaScript at all. Browser support probably isn't quite there yet for most teams, but we are getting close. Not variant. We have added a new not variant which finally adds support for CSS not pseudo class. It does double duty and also lets you negate media queries and support queries. Check out the new not star documentation to learn more. Even more utilities and variants. We have added a ton of other new utilities and variants to version 4.2, including new inset shadow and inset ring utilities, making it possible to stack up up to 4 layers of box shadow on a single element. New field sizing utility for auto resizing text area without writing a single line of JavaScript. New color scheme utility so you can finally get rid of those ugly light scroll bars in dark mode. New font stretch utilities for carefully tweaking variable fonts that support different widths. New inert variant for styling non-interactive elements marked with inert attribute. New nth variant for doing really clever things you will eventually regret. New in variant, which is a lot like group star but without the need for the group class. Support for popover open using the existing open variant to also target open popovers. New descendant variant for styling all descendant elements for better or for worse. Check out the relevant documentation for all of this feature to learn more. And that's it. That's Tailwind CSS version 4. It's been a year of work to get to this point, but we are extremely proud of this release and we can't wait to see what you build with it. Check it out, play with it, maybe even break it, and definitely let us know what you think. Just no bug reports until tomorrow, please. Let us at least enjoy one celebratory team dinner and maybe relax in the hot tub at the hotel for a bit, believing that somehow we really did ship flawless software. So yeah, that's it. If you want to subscribe to their email newsletter, you can enter your email. Thank you for watching. Bye.